Cool.
Dude, why don't we go ahead and jump into the continuing saga of Frank Cho?
Oh, this is really something. So Frank Cho and Milo Manara had a panel at the Italian Comic Con Lucca, or I'm not sure the full name of it, the Lucca Arts Festival or something like that. And he was actually inducted into the Hall of Fame. And they had a panel. I don't have any transcripts from it or anything like that, but where these two men talk about drawing women, because they are well known, at least to me and amongst the comic book world, for drawing these very erotic pinup styles in comic books, either in their own creation or in mainstream.
They're very famous cheesecake artists.
Oh yeah, I mean they're right up there with people like Olivia and Louis Royo.
So I literally learned what cheesecake was like 2 weeks ago. Can you guys explain cheesecake real fast?
It's basically a form of drawn art that centers around women in erotic or semi-erotic softcore poses meant to emulate pinup art from the 1950s and 60s.
Okay.
That's
Gotcha.
basically it. So good examples of that are guys like Frank Cho, guys like Milo Manara, women like Olivia, who does who flaunts it regularly. One of her books is called Let Them Eat Cheesecake. It's a fantastic book. But really, it all stems from a guy named Alberto Vargas from the 1930s, who Vargas's artwork was highly inspirational, incidentally enough, with the original Wonder Woman concept. And there's a very good NPR show with what's her name, the Fresh Air,
Terry Gross. Yes, that was I did hear that one.
Where she does one, and she mentions she calls him Vargas or Vargi or something like that, but it's Alberto Vargas. And how it was highly influential. So this has been around for 80 years. And if you remember, if you've been following on this podcast, we've talked about the number of controversies that Manara and Cho have engendered for themselves by drawing, let's say, suggestive, I wouldn't even call this hardcore, but suggestive covers of people like Spider-Woman, and then Cho kind of being transgressive and parodying it and parodying the kind of outrage. So they've created a little cottage industry in making fun of the outrage, and they kind of land themselves a panel at the Lucca Comic Con to talk about their love of drawing women and how they do it, and the reaction that it's been getting as of late. And sure enough, it caused plenty of reaction, because Mary Sue, which, as Tracy will point out at some point, has become Manara and Cho's like best publicist.
Absolutely. These guys wouldn't even be in the news at this point for this specific thing if it weren't for the Mary Sue becoming like obsessed with it. They're obsessed. Like they're actually validating the situation by being obsessed with it. It's hilarious to me.
We'll post it in the show notes, and they have a very long and drawn-out argument that's worth dissecting with a scalpel, but we don't have time to go into today. But what I find fascinating is Tracy's point is incredibly relevant, because these guys have been doing this forever. And all of a sudden, now we're outraged. We're shocked. We're shocked that Manara and Cho have been doing this. I have art books on my shelf right here next to me that date back almost 15 years. You know, I mean, because Vargas goes back to the 30s. So all of a sudden, no one cared about this. I know no one cared about this because no one knew what the hell I was talking about when I would bring these guys up. No one knew a flying flip about these guys until somebody decided to have an axe to grind about niche artists drawing women. And what's amazing, and I will quote from one article which was written off of the inverse.com, and it is by a woman who I've never heard of before, so I don't know her background, Beth Elderkin. And short post, easy to get through, where she just clearly is not, kind of, what's the word, documents some of their transgressions, quote, putting that in square quotes, over the last couple of years, but closes the article with this interesting paragraph. And she says, quote, "While these men might be talented artists, neither of them are qualified to speak as masters," in scarce quote, "of drawing women, because in order to draw something, you have to understand it. And neither of these men have bothered to know or care about what women want to see or be in comic books. They'd rather complain about evolution or the PC police," also in serious quotes, "rather than acknowledge that they don't know women as well as they thought they did." Tracy, you have fifis on this one.
I have a counterpoint. I mean, you listen to this and you go, okay, let's just talk about the masters of the human form, the Greeks, right? They are the masters of the perfect naked women, right? But
naked men, naked boys, athletes.
Yeah. Across the board, they excelled at creating the perfect human form. And yet, as far as I can think of, just off the top of my head, the only Greek civilization, the only Greek city-state that truly embraced like what the woman wants was Sparta. And they were the Greek city-state that had nothing to do with sculpture or art. That was Athens.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't tell me that you have to know a woman's mind before you create a piece of art about her body. Now, I'm not saying that it wouldn't help, especially if you're trying to sell comic books to women, but that's absolutely not necessary. And she used ridiculous hyperbole. Come on.
I think what's amazing is that I've never thought of these books as actually, by women for women or by men for women. I mean, these are just Cho and Manara doing what they do best and filling a market. I mean, these are the stuff that I love, and I can tell you, it's a super niche market. We're not, the stuff that I'm into is not the mainstream. So getting all bent out of the shape over this kind of stuff is just really, all you're doing is making my stuff is more popular.
It's a wheel of validation and popularity, right? So the Mary Sue talks about this. They get a bunch of retweets from feminists, and then it makes Frank Cho more popular, and so he does more of it, and then the Mary Sue reports on it, so more people like it's just a circle. These two people
eventually
are
it will conquer the world.
Yeah.
Oh God.
More cheesecake. Yes. The conquest of cheesecake. I mean, and here's what I don't get, as I had opportunity to speak to Cho at last year's San Diego Comic-Con very briefly at his table. And he basically said that he's becoming more popular than ever because of this. And he said this, he's not just said it to me, I'm not breaking news here, he said it in other interviews. And I remember the girl and I were at Baltimore 3 years ago, right around the time this stuff started to happen. And there were a lot of women in that audience watching Cho live draw. And, he was...
was that the one where he did Rogue washing the Triceratops?
Yeah.
That was such a great panel.
It was fantastic, and a woman in the panel asked if he gets pushback from women for the way he draws, and he goes, no, mostly it's religious. So he wasn't aware of the vanguard that was coming. But the woman who asked him the question, he goes, I love this stuff. I grew up on Frazetta and Vargas and stuff. I eat this up, but I know some people don't. And I think that's the point that gets missed, is that some women do not like it, and some women do, and a lot of guys like it, and some guys don't. So just be calm and move on with your life, because if you really don't like this stuff, don't talk about it. I mean, there's Tracy talked about nude sculptures from ancient Greece and Rome. Frank, on the bleedingcool.com, there's an article about Frank Cho attends display of full frontal nudity, and it is him in front of Michelangelo's David. Now, come on, folks. Can we really just relax for 1 second here and just not be afraid of naked bodies and how men draw naked bodies and how women draw naked bodies, or butts or boobs or spandex or anything like this? Because the more you irritate them, the more they're just going to draw stuff. I mean, on the Mary Sue page, Frank Cho was given a drawing by Milo Manara, and it's the other view of the Spider-Woman. The
From the
reverse
back?
view of the Spider-Woman is the back. And Manara, now being knowing about the outrage, it's fairly more explicit than it probably ever would have been, and it's definitely. Have you seen it, Tracy? Are you looking at it?
I have. Yep. I'm making a face because it's kind of in poor taste. But
it is, but it's also hilarious, and in context, it's just perfect.
And what is funny to me is that the Mary Sue is popularizing, even or at least publishing about this one thing. It was a gift from one guy to the other. It's not like it's even like the cover of anything. It's
Correct.
Nobody's going to ever see it except that they reported on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Literally, no one except that panel would ever see that particular drawing except that they made a big deal out of it.
Right.
And then, you're talking about women that are on one side really liking it, on the other side really hating it. Then there's me. I don't give a crap. I'm not going to buy it.
Sure. And that's kind of like the whole point, is like someone who has been into this art for years and years and years since I was in college, no one gave a shit about this. And then all of a sudden in 2 years, it's like, oh my God, outrage. It's like, dude, this has been in the back corner of every comic book store that's, in
every comic convention.
Yeah, it's always been there. So just relax, folks. It's not that popular.
It's not going to leave the back corner. Unless you start going to shine a spotlight on it, it's not leaving that corner.
No. I mean, like, I could tell you the dust that these books collect.
Oh my God.
Is just, I mean, just you can grow corn on these covers because there's so much dust on them. It's just, they're not that popular. and really the only people who are getting those names out there are people like the Mary Sue and this Miss Elderkin, or guys like Greg Rucka, who just make a big stink out of this. It's virtue signaling, and just relax. It's not that popular in the first place.
Yep.
Well, honestly, if we apply some logic that they use against their enemies to this, maybe she really does like it.
You're gonna like open up a rift in the universe. It's like crossing the streams in Ghostbusters. You never apply logic to these people.
Damn. Because my thought is, like, if she's protesting so hard, then she must like it and be scared of her feelings.
Well, I mean, what really it comes down to is it's one of these things where you've got a woman like Miss Elderkin or Mrs. Elderkin who is saying, you know, these men don't understand women. And let's assume she's an artist because I don't know who she is. Well, okay, do you understand men? Who the hell says you can draw men? Because you don't sound like you understand them very much. So what are we drawing here? Who's allowed to draw who? And who decides who really understands them? Because she says Cho and Manara don't understand women. Or maybe they do. But maybe you don't think they understand your type of woman. And then you've got these other writers and artists who are going to draw comic books about with men and women in them. Who the hell is to say that they understand what the hell men know or say, or children, or space aliens, or superheroes, or androids, or atomic robots? What are we talking about here? Come on.